What are you guys up to? Okay, so I am Bruce Oreck. Some of you may know me as formerly the U.S. Ambassador to Finland. So let me tell you about some things relative to me you don't know. I have been in the building business for 20 years. I've done historic rehabilitations. I was in charge of all the historic buildings in the city of New Orleans back in the 80s. I've done high-performance buildings, zero-carbon buildings, zero-energy buildings, off-grid buildings. I'm here as the U.S. Ambassador. I built the first LEED Platinum embassy anywhere in the world. I get construction. I get high performance. I'm a member of the executive board of the USGBC. So while I could talk to you about building technology, that's not what I'm going to do. Can you see this? What I'm going to give you is an abbreviated, a shortened form of a long lecture series I did just recently at Harvard. And I'm going to give you the punchline now. We are solving the wrong problem. We're trying to continue to do what we're doing, and I'm about to show you that that doesn't work. And therefore, if you're going to break things and hack things, you ought to be breaking the right things and hacking for the right problems. The serious business, sorry, that's why I have my beer. So this sort of comes off the screen and says, people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. That's Nietzsche. So oh, there we go, okay. So here's the truth. Come on, help me out here, guys. I'll give you a moment to catch up, all right? Turn this so I can see where we both are together. Yeah, okay. That's about as much fun as we're going to have. And the title of the talk I just gave at Harvard, and again, this is a very short slice of that, was don't worry, it's not the end of the world. Just the end of ours. And I'm going to prove this to you. So let's start here. Can we turn the volume up? Yeah.
Our planet is vast. It's difficult to comprehend the scale. It's difficult, too, to comprehend the scale of humanity and the vast changes we've wrought in a lifetime. Population, production and consumption have grown exponentially. Roads, railways, airlines, shipping routes, the digital revolution. We've created a globally interconnected society. Evidence is mounting, we've entered the Anthropocene. Humanity is altering Earth's life support system. Carbon dioxide emissions are accelerating. Greenhouse gas levels are unprecedented in human history. The climate system is changing rapidly. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change assesses the risks and options for societies. Its latest report states it is extremely likely humans are the dominant cause of warming in the past 60 years. Without deep emissions cuts, it is likely Earth will cross the target of 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, the target set by international policy. This could happen as early as 2050. If emissions keep rising at current rates, a 4-degree rise by 2100 is as likely as not. It's very likely heat waves will occur more often and last longer. The Arctic will warm faster than the global average. It's likely sea ice will all but vanish in summer within decades if high emissions continue. It's very likely sea level rise will accelerate. Cities and coastal areas are vulnerable. In general, wet regions are set to get wetter, dry regions drier. Monsoons are likely to become longer, their footprint likely to grow, and downpours likely to intensify. The acidity of the ocean has increased 26% since the start of the Industrial Revolution. The full consequences of all these changes on the Earth system are unknown. Humanity's carbon footprint is huge. Societies will need to adapt to climate change. The scale of change depends on decisions made now. Can we remain below 2 degrees? It is possible, but it is up to societies now to decide the future we want. For a likely chance of achieving the 2-degree target, societies can emit another 250 billion tons of carbon. We burn about 10 billion tons of carbon a year. At current rates, we will use this budget in about 25 years.
And those figures are out of date. I don't know if you've read the papers, but China just acknowledged that it is in fact burning 17% more coal than it had admitted to in the past, which, if you would just use these numbers, would say you can't do it for 25 years, you might be able to do it for 20. But this is the IPCC, and they're very conservative. So let's look at some numbers. This is historical. This is not a projection, this is history. There's the year. The red will be 2 degrees abnormality in temperature. And you'll see normal patterns, heating, cooling, heating. And starting about 1970, watch what happens. And if I took it and ran it to the 2015 year, you'll see that it simply gets worse. I took the projections out of here because I just didn't have time for that, but it doesn't look better. That's not a theory, that's history. And for those who are not centigrade centric, 2 degrees centigrade is approximately 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And it was more likely than not we would have a 4-degree centigrade rise by the end of the century, which basically means vast amounts of the planet Earth will no longer support us. Come on. There's another battery here? No, don't do that. That's that battery. Sorry. Hang on. I always have my... Where's the mouse? Right.
Where's the wireless in the back?
Let's pull that one out. Thank you. Okay. This is from NASA. This is historical, going back basically 400,000 years. And then you have this. And actually this is out of date, it's now over 400. So it's not just the volume of CO2 in the air, it is also the speed at which this change has occurred. It's unprecedented in history. The last time you had levels this high basically was at the end of the reign of the dinosaurs, but not while we've been here. This is the proceedings of the National Academies of Science. And I'm not a fun guy, I read this kind of stuff. And I'm going to ask you a question. That was a brand new issue. What do these cities have in common? I just gave this talk at Harvard, so I just kept the American cities, but they're also European cities. What do all these cities have in common?
They'll go underwater.
Actually, it's worse than that. By 2100, more than 25% of their population-weighted areas will be below high tide, no matter what we do now. You lost. The game is over. You've already emitted so much temperature absorbed into the ocean and the project. If you stopped emitting carbon, if tomorrow we went away, 25% of the populated areas of these cities in the U.S. are already dead men walking. And I could pull up the same thing for Europe and cities all over the world. And that's the best case scenario. That's the best case scenario. Today in the world, every single day, 180,000 people move to a city somewhere on the planet. Every day, 180,000 people move to a city. And the vast majority of cities, of course, on the coastline. 75% of all megacities are on coastlines. Within about 15 years, almost 10% of the population of the planet will live in the 41 megacities. And almost half the population living on coastlines. Those are facts. I have hours of facts. I pick your, there's no disputing the science here. Those are the facts. I want to go through a couple myths. Myth number one, our clean renewable energy future will save us. No, it won't. And let me explain why. By 2040, per capita in China is expected to be 4 times higher than it is in 2010, 3 times higher in India, and 1 to 2 times higher in key growth economies such as Turkey, Mexico, that sort of thing. Which means they're going to be buying a lot more stuff. And the stuff they buy requires more of everything. Such as the 60-lane highway that China just built and now is stuck in a traffic jam that lasted for 2 weeks. Give you an example. U.S. took us 100 years, car-crazy culture, to go from 0 cars to 250 million passenger vehicles. In 1999, China, with 1.3 billion people, had only 15 million cars, which means they could have, at that point, designed any kind of transportation system their brains could have thought of. Maglevs, people movers, anything. But what did they do? They built 60-lane highways, and in 10 years, they went from 15 million to 240 million cars. And still growing. Population. OECD, you know what that is, Europe, Western developed countries. China, India, key growth. You can get kind of flat, but look at this. It's still climbing. It's going to go from the whatever 6 billion in 2000 to the estimated just shy of 9 billion in a few years. And what does that mean? Energy demand in BTUs, and you don't really care how it's measured. Like you can see Europe, the West, is dropping. China's growing, but trailing off a little bit. But it doesn't matter. Look what's happening. The pattern is up. If we actually put into effect the energy savings that we talk about, that's what we do. And if we don't, our energy consumption follows much closer to that line. This, by the way, not my numbers, and it didn't come from some tofu-eating, sandal-wearing hippies. This comes from Exxon. Chemical demand by region. U.S., OECD, you can see, very flat, we said the other thing, but the rest of the world, chemicals, plants, plastics, fertilizers, oils, lubricants, all of which come from fossil fuels. And every time you pull a gallon up, right, or a liter up, you're desequestering carbon. Electrical demand. And this assumes we put into place the efficiencies. Now this is a complicated chart, but bear with me. Basically what this is showing you is look at coal, right? That's the bad guy. While for us, OECD countries, the percentage of coal is clearly dropping, it's still immense for China, and this is now, we know, understated by almost 20%. Going up in India, up in key growth, up in the rest of the world. There's no diminishment in our rate of consumption of polluting fuels. Right? The nice lady with the pretty pictures. You know, if we cut it back, we even make 2%. Well, yeah, but you're not. CO2 emissions. Up, 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 up. Right? This is where we are now, somewhere in here. Even in the doing all this good stuff, it's higher. It's not dropping, it's going up. Non-OECD CO2 emissions surpassed OECD emissions in 2004, meaning the rest of the world's doing worse than we are. And they're expected to rise in the next 25 years by 50%. So myth number one, we got the energy thing. We don't got the energy thing. We got the CO2 thing. No, we don't got the CO2 thing. The numbers, all of the numbers are moving against us. Every single one. And just before we start blaming the Chinese or blaming the Americans, let's just go ahead and jump on Volkswagen. And you know what the governmental response to that was? In Europe, to protect jobs? We'll just change the standard. We'll give them a pass. Oh, so myth number two, sustainable development goals. A term which, although good for the heart, is in fact laughable in truth. The word sustainable means you can keep doing what you're doing forever. Well, you can't keep doing what you're doing, let alone forever. Here's an interesting one, just so you know. I mean, we make 50 billion plastic bottles a year, 60% of which are not recycled, which means 30 billion go into the landfills. And even the ones that are recycled, we still consume 73 billion, strike that, 73 million barrels of oil every year, making them, shipping them. That's not sustainable. You recycle your bottle, you still use you de-sequester the carbon, and where do you think this stuff ends up? 8,000 metric tons a year, of which 80% starts on land, ends up in the ocean. In 10 years, we'll be dumping 1 ton of plastic waste in the ocean for every 3 tons of fish. But hey, I recycle. I was just up in Coley, the Coley Forum. One of my co-speakers, Janusz Potecnik, the co-chair of UNEP's International Resource Panel, and I'm just going to give you one slide of his. Okay, this quadrant in the pale green is what is biocapacity, or a sustainable pathway. You might notice that this is where everybody's going. China's just getting started. There's basically nobody in this area could go higher, and everybody above has to drop down. It's not going to happen. Myth number 3. We have time. You don't have time. We as creatures, as human beings, biologically we think in a linear fashion. Whether I'm 10 years old or 60 years old, a minute is 60 seconds, a day is 24 hours, 365 days in a year, and we think of our lives and everything around us in a linear form, so we have time to study and think and debate. But in fact, everything shifted to exponential. And let me digress for a minute and explain exponential change. If I take the morning newspaper, the Helsingin Sanomat, Wall Street Journal, whatever it is, a piece of newsprint paper, is approximately 0.001 centimeters thick. And if I stack it, it's 0.002, 0.003, 0.004. And the average, let's say that the average paper today has 46 pages. That means it's 0.046 centimeters when you stack it up. That's a linear progression. But now let's talk about exponential. I'm going to fold the newspaper. Flat sheet, fold it in half. 001 to 002. I fold it again, 002 to 004, right? After 10 folds, it's already 2.2 centimeters tall. Exactly, after 10 folds, excuse me. After 10 folds, it's 2.2 centimeters. After 17 folds of the newspaper, it's a meter tall. And after about 25 folds of a newspaper, a piece of newspaper, folding it 25 times, it's as tall as the Empire State Building in New York. And if you could fold a piece of newspaper, 0.001 centimeters thick, if you could fold it 45 times, it would reach from the Earth to the Moon, and that 46th fold would take you all the way back to the Earth. Linear, 0.046, exponential to the Moon and back. And that's where everything has happened. Our consumption patterns, our usage patterns, our growth patterns, we move beyond linear and we're in the exponential times. So, for example, you can get this from a lot of different sources, these numbers. By 2030, in 15 years, you'll need 50% more energy. Where is that coming from? And please don't tell me solar panels. You need 40% more water and 35% more food in 15 years. Now, I'm all for changing from fluorescent bulbs to LEDs. Believe me, I really am. But to allow myself to believe that I've solved the problem is nonsense. This is the 2014 Global Risk World Economic Forum report. And here's what they say. They say, in every sector, the demand for water is expected to increase. Analysis suggests the world will face a 40% global shortfall by 2030 across all sectors. A 40% shortfall in fresh water on average around the globe, not every place, but on average, in 15 years. Just so you know, that is by definition a systemic risk, one that causes systems to break. And it is of such a magnitude that it is also defined as a hystereistic risk, one that causes a system to break and it can't be fixed. Population is growing at a 3x rate, water consumption at a 6x rate. Myth number 4. There's a magic technology out there. Somebody's working on it. Man, the future is just around the corner. Really? Let's just take the water one for a minute. To get ocean water to fresh water means you've got to build a desalination plant, which is incredibly energy intensive. So you're using more energy to make more water. And you got to build the plants, which is very expensive. And then you got to build pipelines to pipe the water around places where we're no longer getting any water. And you're going to deal with a 40% shortfall in 15 years? How long have they been building the damn subway from Helsinki station to the airport? Couldn't even get it there. What is it, 500 meters short? You know, there's a technology out there. Well, there's a confusion between technology and magic. They're different words. They mean different things. But if you really, really want to bet that you can technologically keep on doing what you're doing just by being clever engineers, then the following slide is for you, because every once in a while you need a rainbow butterfly unicorn kitten. You will not fix this by doing what we're doing. You can't. It's magic, not science, to believe that you can keep on doing what you're doing. I can show you stats on Do you know that China used more cement, I think it was in 5 years, than the US used in the last century? Look at hog production, food production. I mean, there isn't a number that's trending in our favor here. But if we recycle enough bottles, I'm sure we can keep on doing it. Before the truth can set you free, you need to know which false beliefs are holding you hostage. And the false belief that is holding us hostage is that we can continue to be in the world the way we are being. And we can't. Mother Nature has a longer and sterner sense of justice. In the 4 billion years of the Earth's history, there have been 5 mass extinctions having nothing to do with us. Over 90% of all species that have ever existed are already extinct. And the biologists will tell you, based on the current rates of extinction, we've entered the 6th great extinction. The question is whether we are going to be sensible enough to be one of the few species that actually transit through this period. So, I leave you with this question. Is there a path forward? It's possible. I won't tell you it's probable, but it's possible. It is possible because the human race, the species, we are determined and we are smart. And when we finally are willing to look at the truth, we actually will try to do the right thing. But we haven't got the time to be screwing around. Because every day we do makes it harder to find a path forward. And harder to find a path forward for lots of people. Every day, the window closes, the door closes. Fewer people will transit into the future because we have fewer options. So if you're going to hack, you're going to break something, please, make it count. Make it important. What gets me up in the morning and doesn't make me depressed is the fact that I have kids. And I'll be damned if I'm going down without a fight to find a path forward for mine. How about yours? Hack away. Thank you.
I have no idea how one follows that.